There you go.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. And hi, everyone. Great to meet you. And Ben, really appreciate you setting up some time. As Ben said, he's asked me to come on and give a little bit of a view of AI. I've come from a corporate background. I'll talk about my background a little bit. And a year ago, I switched into the startup world. So hopefully, I can give a little bit of a perspective from both sides. That sort of corporate side where I was sort of responsible and I had the sort of the hammer over me saying thou shalt invest in AI and find interesting things to do with AI. Whereas now I'm on the startup side where I'm sort of much more sort of looking for sort of partners in the corporate world to apply our technology. Going to start very broad. I appreciate it's going to be quite a spread of experience levels and knowledge levels. Feel free to ask questions as we go through, or if you feel sort of awkward interrupting, put the I think there's a little hand symbol. I'm not used to Zoom. I think there's some sort of symbol that will indicate that there's a question. And then after I start broad, I will start to get a little bit more narrow and look at some of the deeper, more advanced technical aspects, particularly for folks who've perhaps got a little bit more of a sort of advanced knowledge. And any of the pieces I go through today, happy to take offline. If there's anything that's of interest, if anyone wants to brainstorm around any particular aspects, let me know. I'll share my it's mark@imail.ai, but I'll share my details at the end so anyone can get in touch with me and we can chat further. Um, so what are we going to go through today? Firstly, an AI roadmap. So understanding what AI is, how we can sort of compartmentalize the different types of AI. I know having been to learning technologies, having been to Unleash, having been to a range of L&D exhibitions over the last few months as I sort of immersed myself in the AI world, it's astonishing what the term is used for, and the breadth of sort of applications of the term, um, and it can be very confusing. So just a very simple way of sort of deconstructing AI, thinking about it in different ways, and perhaps we'll sort of see if we can throw some ideas around with this group. Appreciative it's sort of Thursday afternoon, so interaction is probably not the preferred thing to do. But we'll then talk about AI agents, which is sort of going that little step further into the complex builds that we're starting to see in particularly in sort of the IT consulting world, where we're seeing constructs of AIs being pulled together, very, very large constructs, huge investments going into that. We're starting to see that filter into the L&D world, and it's, I think, something that is going to be really useful to be appreciative of over the coming months. And if nothing else, just to understand what the term means, to understand what it can do, so that as you look at potential AI applications in the context of your roles, thinking about that as a sort of as a lens to kind of assess the capabilities of the technologies. Then new data sources. Data is king, as it were, and queen. And I think looking at how we can leverage these new data sources to do cool new things is incredibly exciting. And then finally, thinking about rapid prototyping. So thinking about how we can do these things quickly, effectively, without sort of necessarily having to take a lot of time and spend millions, but work within our budgets, within our timeframes to do interesting, impactful things. Sound useful? Yeah, awesome. Um, I'll do very brief background, just to let everyone know sort of where I've come from. I was most of my career at Ernst& Young. I was department leader there for research and insights. So that was very much around sort of analyzing and predicting corporate behaviors. So I led that for one of the divisions for many years. Then I was global knowledge leader before moving over to a company called Russell Reynolds, which is the largest search firm in the world. I was head of commercial there, and that was all around assessing and developing the leaders of the future and how we come up with new and intelligent ways of doing that. One of the big tenets of my role over the last 18 months was application of AI. So I was on the Global AI Steerco, and it was around how we use AI to really sort of think about what makes a great leader, how we assess that competency, how we develop that competency, which led to my spin-off into a startup, the wonderful world of the highs and lows, peaks and troughs. So spun off that last summer, developed what we call MVP, a minimum viable product, pitched it to Google, got onto the Google Accelerator program. So we're very, very proud to be part of that. And that gives us access to a lot of cutting edge technology and insights, which is a fantastic place to be. So we're just pivoting off that into sort of the commercial world at the minute. So that gives me a little bit of a perspective of both sides of the coin, and hopefully helps me to sort of inform how I sort of share that thinking with everyone here. So this is what this is how I sort of categorize in a bit of a 9-box model AI. These are in a sense, you can tick one or more from each column, but generally each column will have a tick in it. And what I'd like to go through is some examples of what fits within each of these. So we've seen a real evolution across these spaces as things have become more complex. We've shifted from text-based to audio-based, increasingly to video-based. We've shifted from generation to more of an interactive set of models to more of an operation and execution set of models. And I'll talk about what each of these mean as we go. And we shift from what I call native sort of large language model information to adjunct databases to entire corporate data ecosystems. So what I'll talk through over the next sort of 10 minutes or so is how we can use this as a little bit of a lens to go, right, what am I looking at right now? A vendor's come to me with something that looks very shiny. It has all the bells and whistles. It seems to be a fantastic product and they're calling it AI, but actually what is it? Is it something that I'm spending a lot of money on, but is just a ChatGPT wrapper with a prompt that is doing something? Or is it something a little bit more complex than that? So when we're talking about text, we're talking about when you go into ChatGPT directly, or when you have just sort of the sort of text-based ecosystem. When we talk about audio, we're thinking about sort of more of those sort of push-to-talk experiences that you're getting. And when we're talking about video, we're talking increasingly the kind of video avatar and video AI space. When we're talking about generation, just to reflect on that, generation means you put something in and it creates something, and that's your output. When we're talking about interaction, we're talking about you put something in and it responds, and there's a logical and a reasoned set of responses, and there's an iteration to it. And when we're talking about operation, we're talking about the execution of an application, say an email or a program. Increasingly, sort of there's called operator models, which actually use the internet for you. And then when we look at data, we're looking at, as I said, native. It's sort of you don't add anything to it. Subject matter, you might attach a file, you might attach a small database, you might attach a spreadsheet, and it functions off that content. And then ecosystem, as I said, is that broader sort of often companies now increasingly looking at OneDrive as an ecosystem where you set your entire company's information as a baseline. It could be Oracle and PeopleSoft for HR, and you use that as your data set using vector databases for your operations. And this is really sort of rapidly evolved over the last 2 years. So in 2023, you saw a lot around the content generation piece. So e-learning generation, I don't know if you've ever been to Learning Technologies or World of Learning or one of those events, and you've gone around and you've seen the dozens of stalls that say, look, buy our AI-empowered e-learning that frankly looks a little bit like the e-learning the year before. It's just they've added like a little bit of an AI sort of generation facility to it. Then suddenly there was a wave of L&D assistants, chatbots for the future. You don't have to talk to a human anymore. Chatbots that are here, they're here and now. That progressed rapidly to sort of content, audio and video. So if we think about things like Docebo, if anyone's come across Docebo and they have their content generator, well here, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, there's no audio and video element here. I'm interacting with a text only aspect. So we need to think about that in the context of our workflows, in the context of how we're going to be positioning it in our organization. We're thinking about generation of content here. You're going to put something in and it's going to throw something out. There's no ongoing interaction aspect. There's no coaching. There's no engagement here. And we're talking about native, sometimes database oriented data. So we're not talking about complex data ecosystems. That suggests actually, as a first port of call, things like Docebo are great in the sense that actually they're often quite sort of they're quite simplistic to understand, to implement. They tuck in on a text basis, which a lot of e-learnings and content will be based around. And so, you know, this can be a great sort of way of just getting a nice kind of intro to the world of AI. Notebook LLM. I don't know if anyone's come across Notebook. Yeah. So Notebook is then we're moving to audio, and we had this fantastic wave of podcasts being generated automatically from a prompt. And that for 6 months was incredibly exciting for everyone. And everyone suddenly started coming up with these generated podcasts that they sort of throw out on LinkedIn. Synesthesia, HeyGen, have people started coming across these ones? Video generation. So again, 18 months ago, it felt like suddenly every single L&D outfit was promoting a brilliantly generated HeyGen video that spoke and talked, and actually people found incredibly difficult to engage with. And actually, Dr. Phil came out with a great post this week around exactly this, the notion of, you know, people aren't feeling empathetic and engaged with the content that's coming from some of these static video generation pieces. But 18 months ago, they were incredibly impactful. So there's that sort of fatigue setting in already to a certain extent around these. Although in some spaces we're still seeing it as incredibly useful. So then that hits the 2024 mark where we start looking at things like content pathing and skill mapping starting to come out. So here we see things like NeoBrain. We saw this emergence of organizations focused on the ecosystem of data that an organization sits on. So it sits on development data, performance data, it sits on skills maps, and bringing these together, integrating them into an AI analytical engine that says, we can see these are your skills, we can see these are your skill needs, you know, potential career mobility options, and a raft of other applications coming out of this very, very exciting sort of space of skills mapping and content pathing. I would highly recommend some of the HR events like Unleash, where you see a wealth of really, really clever skills mapping AI starting to emerge and develop incredibly rapidly. And then we move towards things like smart coaches. My Lord, the last 9 months has been full of smart coaches. Coaches to ask me how I am. How are you doing today, Mark? You doing okay? You sure? What's your development goal today? What are we going to be doing? And I've no idea how these get past IT compliance, but somehow they do. And they come out with these wonderful things like Amy with Coach Hub, the AI coach for the global workforce. And they were in the FT a few months ago. Really interesting concepts here of, are people going to be comfortable with AI acting as their development support, acting as their personal and psychological support in a work context? And how does that sync up with learning and development? So if you plug in somebody's development goals, all of their data, their information, you get that on a live feed, and you have a persistent coach that says, look, how are you doing at any given time, given what you're trying to develop, what you're trying to achieve, how you've progressed? I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I'm really, really keen to see sort of where some of this goes. I know it's still quite frontier in terms of development and applications, but there are some really, really interesting ones out there. And let me just go back to this one here. And then what we're starting to see is this shift now. Ian, you've got a question?
Very simple question, Mark. Will you be sharing the slides, or do we make screen grabs?
Happy to share slides afterwards, and I will need to get Uh, I'll ask Ben for your. Actually, I'll have emails off the back of this invitation, so I'll share the slides out.
Fab, thank you.
And you're more than welcome to take screen grabs as well. And also, the meeting's being recorded, so the whole thing will be shared afterwards. I
Thank
warn
you.
you, there's videos in here, so your hard drive may fall over when I actually send you this. Um, all of this making sense so far, Ian? Pacing, okay?
No, love it. Thank you. Very helpful.
Brilliant. So 2025, a couple of things start emerging, and I know there's a number of large organisations starting to invest in these. I know, for example, Deloitte. This is one of their primary investments for their global L&D. Actually, it's a conglomerate of international L&D groups, but it's one of their key focal areas. Ernst & Young is coming out with EY role play. There's a range of organizations starting to look into this notion of the dynamic avatar, i.e. a hey gen that you can talk to for a particular purpose. Somewhat useful in some circumstances, incredibly useful in others. So where we're looking at the challenges of scaling role plays within an organization, scaling practice, scaling things like sort of immersive assessments, immersive scenarios that traditionally are very, very high cost to do, but very impactful. You're now starting to see these dynamic conversational avatars being able to provide that kind of functionality. And then adaptive content. And I'm going to go into some examples here and how we use it to show you some use cases. But adaptive content is really around where you have an ability to create one course for an organization, and currently you send that course out and it's the same for everybody. The adaptive content element changes that course based on individual context, individual needs, individual domains of expertise. So it might be it adapts the content and its examples for that person's industry or that person's function. Perhaps it changes the leveling of how that course is given in terms of its complexity. So this notion of adaptive content, I think, is a really, really interesting one. And again, where we're looking at, I'll sort of come back to this point in the future, but where we're looking at convincing people that there is a compelling firm-wide use case for learning and development AI, I think it's when we start getting into these role play avatars, into this adaptive content, when we start to think about real scale gains, real scale impact, just in time, hyper tailored, at point of need content that people have access to. And I think you're going to start seeing that elevation of that kind of ROI messaging you can pass up the food chain because of those capabilities. Any questions around all of that before I sort of move on to the AI agent space? That's the kind of whistle-stop tour, a little bit of that way of analyzing based on, as I said, the media type, the architecture type, and the data type.
A question, it's Natalie here, just in case you can't see me as well. I was curious if I wanted to find out more about scaling role plays, but particularly the immersive assessment part, where would I go to find out about that? You're talking about the AI sort of dynamic avatar perspective.
Yeah. So
I literally asked them, tell me what other people are doing, or is there somewhere that would be good to go and look?
So I'm actually going to go into quite a bit of detail around the avatar on this call, so I can talk you through. What I would say is the important thing to think about is, what is it for? Is it for practicing something somebody's just learned? Is it for teaching something? Is it for assessing somebody's competencies? And what I'll go into is, when you're looking at that design of the avatar, when you're looking at which avatars you go for, when you're looking at how you build them out, you principally need to look at kind of things like the kind of AI agent structure that sits underneath it and works towards that objective. So I'll go through that.
Yeah.
And also, if
Super.
you want more guidance on the various options around all of that, happy to sort of chat separately as well.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? No? Cool. So almost homework, I'd suggest this media architecture data piece. Think about the AI you're currently invested in. Do a little bit of a map and write into these boxes where they sit. Think about the AI you're going to invest in and where they sit. Think about the use cases and applications in those contexts. And then look at the other ones where you don't have anything and go, actually, these might be interesting areas to explore that we haven't explored yet. So if we have done a lot of text and audio, but we haven't started looking into the video piece, there's a big gap and a big opportunity there to drive a lot of value. Similar if you're not leveraging enough of your learning and development data ecosystem, talking to someone like me or talking to someone like Ben or others about the potential applications that could sit in that space and drive impact is definitely worthwhile. Right. So I say we started simple. Now we're going to start getting into sort of the world of AI agents. Firstly, a question: does anyone know what an AI agent is? Has anyone heard the term before? No. Okay. Oh, Ian, what's your take?
Well, about 8 months ago, Salesforce announced at our annual Jamboree Dreamforce in San Francisco that we were launching Agentforce. And there was even talk that we would change the company name to Agentforce. So yes, it's a profound part of our company strategy now. And so we are selling agents in addition to our software as a service products as well. In terms of a definition, gosh, I mean, the theory is that agents will take over activities from human beings, starting with the most mundane and repetitive, and then potentially expanding into legal work, into accountancy, into much kind of more foundational, fundamental areas of human activity. The kind of things where they're being used at the moment are, for example, if you ring up to make a booking at a restaurant or something, you could be talking to an agent or you could be engaging with an agent. The kind of questions that they will interact with, it could be a chatbot, but if it's more complex, agents are meant to be able to take decisions and have a level of so-called intelligence, which supersedes that of a chatbot or of a co-pilot. But yeah, that's kind of a very high level kind of explanation.
Thanks, Ian. Natalie?
I was actually in the process of trying to find out how to lower my hand because I think that covered it. But I think for me, it was my understanding at a very, very basic level is it's kind of AI, I think, that operates independently of humans and can talk to other AI that can be active. I don't know whether making decisions is that probably is the right word from a logic perspective, but also from a leadership perspective, which is where I'm also interested in it, that might mean that in the future you might have a team that has human people and AI agents as well. I don't know how much of all that is totally accurate, and I've found lower hands, so there we go.
Spot on. So it's multiple AIs working in partnership and in collaboration with each other. That's the idea. And what I'm going to talk through is hopefully quite a simple and sort of with a few applications and use cases, a walkthrough of agents in the context of how we use them. I won't give a broad AI sort of agent discussion. It's a topic that could take hours, so I'll sort of keep it focused on our specific use cases. Mustafa Suleiman, head of AI at Microsoft, former founder of DeepMind. Imagine a kind of AI council meeting to solve problems or find answers for the user. After all, this is how progress gets made in our world: debate, discussion, bouncing ideas off others and getting feedback. Amazingly, it seems true of AI as well. So This is his perspective on the AI agent construct, and it is something that has been a driving force of progress in the AI space over the last sort of 12 months or so. What you've seen with ChatGPT personally, for example, you might have seen that move from 4.0 to 0.1. And you had this move from a very fast response to a response that seems to take ages and gives you a page of writing, and it says thinking for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And that's because it has multiple AIs asking questions, answering questions in sequence to refine the response for the user. So even the sort of the most basic AI sort of content generation pieces now are very much starting to leverage this agent architecture. Andrew Ng did a seminal conversation on it last year, where he talked about agentic reasoning design patterns, huge school of study currently. Reflection, so that's the metacognitive aspect of the agents able to think about their own processes and why they're doing things. Tool use, so the ability to execute, to write emails, to do things. Planning, so we used to have this idea of chain of thought prompting, where you helped the AI plan out step by step, whereas now you can have multiple agents planning in sequence. And multi-agent collaboration, so AI agents working together to do things. Now, the potential of this in the L&D world, really across that entire line of AI applications I talked about, elevates the capability significantly. And when we're thinking about, when we're looking at many of the other departments in organizations that are perhaps sort of often a little bit more on the front foot, the technology departments, the operations departments at large organizations, they are looking at large agentic solutions that help to sort of deliver complex applications. So this is just reflecting a little bit on what I said before. They can be more scalable, they can be more adaptive, and they can offer new data sets. And when we're talking about getting buy-in for L&D AI investments, these can be critical. I think there's a knock-on effect here. That ability to show that greater impact, you can talk to CEOs now about, look, actually, this is really important because it's investing in people. It's making them more employable, more educated, at scale, organization-wide. It really is sort of countering that sort of that what we're hearing in the market often at the minute, that CEOs are getting beaten over the head for saying they're going to streamline 20% of jobs because of AI agents. Actually having a counter narrative to that can be deployed at scale effectively is very, very important. And also it's great for, if you're trying to come up with this as a messaging for your budgets and use cases, AI usage, encouraging people to use AI. Some of these agents can really sort of give an opportunity to do that again at scale in a more effective way. So this is the structure that we tend to use in our organization. I'll show a couple of examples of how that looks, but essentially we use things like an orchestrator, a thinker, a decider, and an executor. So an orchestrator is the conductor of the AI agents. So if we think about, I'll show you the use cases in a second, but if we think about sort of perhaps when you're going in and going, right, I want to generate a piece of course content, the thinker might say, well, what's going to be the relevant elements to go in here? Here are some options. The decider might go, right, I'm going to choose the best out of these options. And then the executor might go, right, now I'm going to put this into play. And it's a very simple 1, 2, 3. But then it gets more complicated. This really does sort of start to get into the world of, dozens of agents, dozens of applications at that industrial scale. I would obviously start at the simple scale, but this is where advanced AI research, advanced AI sort of application is going very, very quickly. I think I mentioned here there are sort of applications across this. I'll skip going through those in detail just for the just in the interest of time. Adaptive content and scenarios tailored to individuals' context and deployable at point of need. This is how we specifically use AI agents. So we do, principally what we do is we do immersive AI role plays in business scenarios. So we put people into a scenario where they're talking, for example, with a CEO of a particular company. They're looking to achieve a particular aim or objective. And what we do is we design that simulation oriented towards that objective, and then we do an assessment of how that person performed afterwards. So we have certain what we call accelerators that come out of a box that do these with a particular focal point in mind, and we design them bespoke as well with organizations. And what we're looking at is when we're thinking about that AI avatar talking to that user, it needs to know who that user is. It needs to know who they are. It needs to understand what the context and objectives are of that situation for that specific user, but also every other context and every other specific user. So we have an agent architecture that takes in some information, put in up front, designs the behavior based on 3 key elements. So that's context, content, and behavior. So when we're thinking about interactive AI avatar scenarios, we're thinking about those AIs need an agent that can analyze and design the context element. The context element means this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to achieve in this situation. We need to figure out the content. What does that AI avatar know? So we're working with a large sort of global distribution firm at the minute, and in that context, there's a product set that the AI needs to know. So the ability to bake in information on the fly about the relevant content set that specific avatar knows to create that sort of that scenario. And then finally, behavior. So we think about the behavior of these avatars, designing the behaviors of these avatars in that context. Is this making sense as I'm going? Yeah, some nods, good. So if we think about these immersive experiences that we're running, when you have that adaptive content set with the orchestrator saying something as simple as to the user, what is your background? What's your level of experience? And it then going through a thought process and adapting the difficulty level. Now imagine you have 50 e-learnings that are being distributed out to 1,000 people, and having an AI agent that at the beginning goes, oh, how senior are you? Right, now I'm going to change how I deliver this course content to you because of that question. And it goes in, adapts it, and it delivers it automatically. And it works behind the scenes, and it's quite scary when you actually look and you see they're having conversations with one another. It's slightly Matrix style, but it's incredibly effective. What's your domain of expertise, and adapting the functional context. So I'll take you through an example in a second where we actually deliver content and the examples given adapt based on the industry. So if I am a consultant in the automotive industry, all of my examples given in the course content are relevant to Chrysler or Ford or Daimler, and that makes it so much more engaging as a piece of content for the user. So much more engaging. What's your industry firm? I mean, similar function, industry firm. I'm sort of repeating a little bit across there. So where our AI captures something as simple as somebody saying, I'm a highly experienced IT advisor engaging with a senior marketing leader in a global retail organization with the aim of strategic engagement around priorities. This is generating a mapping of different types of information through the agent that says, I know that technology is going to be really relevant here. I know retail is going to be really relevant. I know it needs to be at strategic level. Therefore, I will design off the back of this and I will implement off the back of this knowledge. And Ian, I mean, to your point about, Salesforce, when they're looking at their agentic structures, that ability to look at the information being contained within a CRM about a client, the ability to go onto LinkedIn and pull that profile, the ability to say, what are the conversations we've had before? And then to use that to adapt, for example, a client conversation or a pitch preparation role play is incredibly powerful. And we're actually again, we're talking to that same global distribution firm about exactly that, how we plug in to Salesforce to get that richness of data that can make for an even more customized experience off that single sort of product set. So let me share an example. What I'll share now is this is a video-based experience that we've designed for a professional services firm. And at the outset, there is an AI that talks to the person and asks them a series of questions, which is then baked into the experience design.
Hello, I'm Sue, your guide to creating a tailored role-play experience. I'll ask a few questions to customize your session. For more information, please press the question mark. Kindly avoid using acronyms or abbreviations. The more detail you provide, the more immersive your experience will be. Let's begin with your background. Could you tell me about the company you work for and what it specializes in?
Yes, I work for Global Recruitment Incorporated. We are a executive search and leadership advisory firm. We work across a range of industries and we operate globally. So I'll pause there. It will continue asking questions. If it's unsure, it will ask for validation. It will ask for more information. If it's sort of at the end, it goes through a process where it asks for more around the person's personal intents. What's the personal objectives that they have? And it captures all of that information up here. Company, role, priorities, who you're going to talk to. So this is a client conversation trainer. So it's going to help people build trusted advisor relationships with their clients. It builds out the AI company, the role, the priorities, and the session objectives, puts it through what we talked about before, the orchestrator going, right, how do I patch all of this together? How do I feed this into the context prompt? How do I feed this into the content prompt? What else, what other data do I need to get into there? How do I feed it into the behavior prompt? Then it executes it. And then at the end of that,
Let's get started. What are we doing today?
hi there. I really appreciate you taking the time to connect. I know you've got an incredibly busy mandate as the new CHRO. I really wanted to just find the time to introduce myself, get to understand what your most pressing needs, concerns, and priorities are, and share a little bit about what we do and how we can help partner together.
Thank you for your introduction. My top priority is identifying and developing top talent for senior executive succession. I need efficient, high-quality results. What specific strategies does Global Recruitment Incorporated implement to ensure the placement of the best candidates in high-pressure executive roles? I'll need precise examples and outcomes.
So you can see that one intake for you can almost unlimited variety of people's backgrounds can then feed through within around 8 seconds, design a client conversation role play experience adapted to that individual, the type of clients they like to talk to, the outcomes that they're aiming for. And I think you know, this technology, I mean, last month I said it was 9 months old, it's now 10 months old. You know, this technology and this agentic infrastructure is 10 months old. So, you know, just thinking about the art of the possible here, when you're thinking about all of your training programs, where you can create these role plays that sit at the back end of them that people can then practice what they've just learned in an applied manner that's relevant to them or relevant to the client conversation they're just about to have. The scalability of this kind of technology is phenomenal. Let me pause there briefly because I've been chatting on for a brief while. Any questions or comments before I carry on to the data section? No? Cool, awesome. Right, Final few sections. I think this one is this one's for the geeks out there. I've had a bit of data science in my background, and I love the wonderful world of Power BI. So this one's for me. So if you do a training course, if you do a role play live, and it's a phenomenal experience, people learn hands-on, they practice things. That information is kind of, aside from some notes from the coach, is kind of disappearing into the ether. Whereas when you've got AI-based role play, be that text-based, a lot of people are doing sort of text-based kind of gamification pieces now, all the way through to what we're doing, which is kind of the audio-visual interactive pieces. You're creating a transcript, and that transcript, our co-founder's an organizational psychologist, and he'll profess that transcript is one of the sort of new pieces of power data. A rich sort of qualitative data set of how people think, how they logically make decisions as they go through a conversation, how they go tactical or strategic, how they go collaborative or perhaps more challenging, how they go solution oriented, or if they step up and they think about insights and the future. All the way through to how they problem solve at a cognitive level. So we think about sort of behavioral data, we think about competency data, cognitive data, and experiential data as the four core data sets in this area. And having those role play transcripts, applying things like Hogan to them, applying things like even your proprietary skills maps, assessment frameworks to them, and seeing how people stack up in the context of that learning and over time, seeing where across cohorts people are struggling. This is one that we use for that client conversation trainer. We look at understanding client needs, communication clarity, solution relevance, strategic insight, engagement rapport building, strategic question and action orientation. And actually, we've run this one around 160 times. We did it with the Cranfield MBA cohort in April. Their entire cohort went through this for the strategic sales elective. And action orientation is almost always very low. People love having a really interesting conversation up front, but they're very bad at closing out that conversation and making something happen at the back end of it, except for when you get to MD level. As soon as you get to MD level, that number goes from about 45, 50 and whizzes up to about 80. There's something about a managing director, partner level person, and maybe it's the facet of, actually that's a competency it takes to get into and be successful in that role. Suddenly the action orientation spikes massively. And this is these scores we have them now heavily benchmarked, so you can actually sort of very clearly see where those levels of seniority hit. And it's incredibly interesting. But being able to get this new data set across hundreds or thousands of people who go through this type of role play and identify who are your superstars, identify where the development areas and needs are. It's a really exciting, as I said, as a data junkie, it's a really exciting new space. Any questions on data? That was a short but sharp sort of look on it. Ian, I imagine this is thoroughly in your world.
You anticipated me coming up. I mean, the thing about data, which I guess all companies will struggle with, is around taxonomy, right? And particularly companies that go through things, larger companies that go through mergers and acquisitions, where a word means one thing in one company means something else in another company. I'm curious how you're addressing that and how you see agentic AI coping with mixed taxonomies and what you see the future is there, because that's really where I think most companies are struggling, should I say, with the accuracy of agentic AI and agentic AI responses.
Yeah. I mean, there's a range of. I mean, this sort of harks with the whole MCP kind of evolution at the minute in terms of the kind of creating AI friendly APIs. I think you're going to get AI friendly data interfaces, and in a sense, it will be up to the AI to design those cross interfaces of the taxonomies and how those interlaced on an objective by objective basis. I think it's that good that it can do that. However, currently, I think taxonomy around data and IT compliance and integration are the two biggest headaches of industrial level agent development. I mean, it's a nightmare, and it's, you know, companies have small armies of you know, people in the machine sort of churning through these taxonomies to try and weave them all together. It's not a job I'd enjoy, but it's super critical for getting some of these things working effectively. So totally agree with you.
Thank you.
More an observation from my side. I was just thinking from a leadership development and a talent perspective, where perhaps getting in acts, etc., isn't a way to go, or where you want to do some form of assessment. I could see that this in the future, when it's been validated, etc., would be really useful, and even in some of these sort of assessments, and pulling in psychometric, and like you were saying in Hogan as well. But in the interim, you've got to do all the evidence-based stuff that needs to be in place. I could see this being really helpful to enable people to develop their skills, to practice, and to get better insights as well. So really interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think, I mean, I know Hogan are working on it. I know a lot of the big five Shrek firms are working on it, along with companies like, I think GH Smart has a big investment in this space at the minute. And at the minute, the validation piece isn't fully there for anyone that I've seen yet at scale, because that takes time. I think the reality is, though, it is observationally, it works incredibly well. And therefore, as an enablement tool, and I think you hit the word on the head there, enablement, you know, helping people make decisions, helping people steer sort of assessors or decision makers around, you know, hirings, promotions, sort of all of that sort of, you know, talent space. I think it's a it's more powerful, I think, than people give it credit for. Right, let me just move on to the next one. Oh, yep, I haven't got the one who's just run in. Do you mind taking for 10 more minutes? Is that okay? Thanks. You can go with Jesse. Right. So next one that we'll look at is just very briefly the teaching element. I talked about this in terms of the adaptation of course content. So here we select an industry, we select a functional domain. This is for competency-based interviewing. So we're working on this with a we worked on this with a executive search organization, and then it then creates a resume and a job specification that's used to teach the course content and role play against. So you will be consistently role playing, doing an interview with the same person, but you can apply this to an organization with, in this context, sort of 350 odd exec search folk who are all coming from different walks of functional and industry experience. So you'll go in, you'll talk to an AI that will teach you the course content in the context of that industry and domain, and then you'll practice it in that role play. I mean, it's incredibly interesting. Do you need AI agents? I mean, if you're first starting out, this is, you know, it feels like really, really complex stuff. And I'd say it's not cheap as well. It takes time to develop. Other AI is easier to get in there. But once you're there, it can be transformative. The use cases can be incredibly high impact, and it really elevates that traditional AI. So what I'd say is, if you're not there yet and you're still in the sort of space of exploring your options around AI, I would still try and find a YouTube video or two. Even now, just find a couple of videos that can give you, every now and again, just get into that flow. You know, follow Dr. Phil on Ethan Mollick and others on LinkedIn. So those posts just float up to the top, and every now and again, you just keep on top of some of those emerging applications in that space. And also, if you have people in your organization who are doing agentic AI, find half an hour for a coffee with them and say, look, could we have a brainstorm? I don't really understand this, but could we have a brainstorm so that I can think about my vision for what this could look like in 12 to 18 months' time? And that sort of leans to that idea of, you know, plan today for the technology of tomorrow. Plan today with the awareness of what it can do, on the assumption this is going to get cheaper, easier, and more prevalent as we progress. I think I've talked about this one already enough. Experiment quickly. I still use something called custom GPTs, which is a very simple application in ChatGPT where I go in and I can create an AI. And you can actually find out how to use it by saying to ChatGPT, how do I create a custom GPT? And I will test almost all of my prototype concepts in that at the outset when they're quite simple prototypes. It allows you to put some data in there, create some prompts, and test it. And for the majority of use cases, it's a really quick and easy way to evaluate whether something works or not. The other thing is ask ChatGPT. Put in something like this, take a screenshot, put it in, say, look, here's my current areas of AI that I'm investing in. Or here are my current priorities. Here are my users' challenges. Think about across this in the context of learning and development, what my plan or strategy could be to implement AI going forwards. I think it's a vastly sort of underused tool from a strategic planning and from a sort of a kind of a visioning perspective. So I would certainly advocate, if nothing else, people give that a try after the session today. Go into ChatGPT, go into Gemini, take a screenshot, write about where you are and what you're trying to achieve, create a simple paragraph and ask it, what would you do? How could you approach this? What are some great ideas? What are some companies that I could look at on the internet that might fit into these spaces, that might give us, given our specific needs, a real uplift? Very simple. Take 5 minutes and it will give you a really, really interesting, and debate it, have a discussion with it around those pieces. It'll be a really, really worthwhile 5-10 minutes of your time. And then finally, just to leave you with sort of where we're going. And when I'm talking about sort of planning today for the technology of the future, that's what we're doing as well. We started, as I said, sort of less than 12 months ago, with something looking a bit like that, and then we moved something a bit like that. Now we're moving to something looking even more immersive, and we're moving towards multi-agent framework. So I'll share a little snippet of a grand release, a sneak peek for this group here of what that is going to look like over the next few months for us. And what's one learning or piece of support you might need to help improve?
We could benefit from more targeted training sessions focused on specific safety protocols and best practices. Additionally, support in implementing a mentorship program could help newer employees understand safety expectations better. So
we're moving from the computer graphics era to what we call the stable diffusion era. And even beyond that, as we look out, and there's something we're working on with London Business School at the minute that we're starting to experiment in this space. Hi, give me one key fact about Microsoft's financial position right now.
One key fact about Microsoft's financial position right now is that they have a strong balance sheet with significant cash reserves. This financial strength allows Microsoft to invest in research and development, make strategic acquisitions, and weather economic downturns more effectively.
Could somebody give me one key fact about Microsoft's exposure to the healthcare sector right now?
One key fact about Microsoft's exposure to the healthcare sector is that they have developed and are actively promoting the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare.
So we've got an ecosystem here now where we're talking to the agents in that agent infrastructure directly. And when we're thinking about things like team effectiveness, when we're thinking about things like immersive business scenarios where you put into a challenge or you put into a situation in which you need to manage a meeting scenario, where one of the use cases we're thinking about at the minute is with a trainer of chair people, looking at it in terms of preparing the chair people for a board meeting. The variety of potential applications of this emerging technology that we're now starting to experiment with the help of our wonderful friends at Google is just absolutely mind-blowing. So I'll stop there for any I won't go into what we develop, but we have obviously sort of a set of things that we have that can really enable internal conversations, client conversations, competency and skills development using those sort of immersive scenarios. And we work with companies to prototype and pilot that at scale, at speed, but starting with a small, cost-effective way of experimenting on something that's going to have impact and showcase what can be done. So we really sort of try to work in the best way possible to do something that helps you figure out what you can do before having to make those big investments. So I will pause there for any final questions or comments, or as I said, more than happy to take, if you drop me an email, more than happy to take conversation offline, talk about any of the things that I've covered today. Thank you very much. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes as well until my little one runs back in, but if anyone does have any more questions.
You need an agent to support you there, Mark. Childcare agent.
Yeah, that's. I think I'll leave out. I don't know, the ethics of that one are a little bit.
Thanks a lot. Really interesting and really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian.
Cheers.
Yeah, likewise. It was really interesting, and it was great to actually see some real life use cases as well and demos, because I've heard people talk about it, but actually seeing, say, for example, the I can't remember what you call it, multi-agent framework, actually just see that in practice. I was like, oh, that's what that could look like. So really interesting.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. More than happy to pick up any of that around the avatars if that's going to be interesting for you.
Yeah, fabulous. I know Ben isn't here because he's on a call, but I don't know whether he needs us to close off the recording for him. And who is doing that? I don't know whether we
I think I can
but...
I think I can do it my side. So I'll do that now.